Roger Craig's story is telling us something different. So we should lean in and pay attention. And he is saying, actually, that Oswald himself from day one was like, I told you people I left. That station wagon belonged to Mrs. Payne. Don't try to get her involved in this. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Nell, and if you're new, then welcome. I would love to earn your subscription. I think I told you guys I'm going to be traveling the next couple of weeks, and so we've got some different topics coming up, and it's going to be popcorn style. So we might have some news stories, possibly a follow-up to the documentary, The Shiny Happy People that I started in June. We'll do the final episodes of that during this time, and other things. So today what we are going to do is read from a volume of Penn Jones Jr., Forgive My Grief. This particular copy that I'm reading from, let's see. What's wonderful is that when I first pulled up this article to read it, I actually printed it out because I found it online and I didn't think I would be able to have a copy of Penn Jones Jr., Forgive My Grief 3. I do have versions 1 and 2 that he printed. That was my first treat that I got for myself off of eBay when I monetized the channel. These were the very first books that I purchased, was Forgive My Grief 1 and 2 by a man named Penn Jones, who lived here in the Dallas area and did his own investigations into the assassination, but also used his local newspaper as a source and as a means through which to do that investigation. While he was doing local news, he would include information about the Kennedy assassination. And he was one of that early group of investigators that kept the interest in the case alive in the early years. So we all owe a debt of gratitude to Penn Jones Jr., but this is his third book. It's Forgive My Grief 3, revised by Penn Jones Jr. It was published in 1976, originally 1969. So this is a reprint. It's the first reprint that was done in 1976. And this is showing a man picking up a stray bullet in Dealey Plaza. This is one of the photographs that Deputy Sheriff Buddy Walters found the object, said later that day that it was a .45 caliber slug. So this is one of the bullets that's disputed. And then this photo we've talked about before. This is taken at Parkland Hospital the day that Kennedy was there, while Kennedy was still there. And that is Jack Ruby walking away. So he put two famous photos here on his book. But the section that we are going to read is called The Importance of Roger Craig. This article was originally written March 14th, 1968. There's a poem up at the top that says, I have loved no darkness, sophisticated no truth, nursed no delusions, allowed no fear. William Osler. One of the things I love about Penn Jones and these early researchers is that pioneering spirit. The first time I encountered the story of Penn Jones, I was so inspired by his commitment to truth, and I continue to be that way. I feel the same about the ways that I've learned of Robert Groden's experiences over the years, and that's what I've tried to communicate in the video that I'm producing about his life. But also, the witness that we're going to read about today is Roger Craig, and he is someone who stood for truth. You can intake his story and let me know what you think in the comments. The importance of Roger Craig. One of the most important witnesses in the Kennedy assassination is Roger Dean Craig, a deputy sheriff in Dallas at the time the president was killed. Craig has been fired from his job. His testimony in the Warren Commission has been altered, and an attempt has been made on his life. Yet he has not yielded an inch on what he saw, what he said, and what he did on November 22nd, 1963. Craig insisted from the day of the assassination that he saw Oswald race down the grassy area and get into a station wagon like the one owned by Mrs. Ruth Payne. of Irving. He says Oswald entered the automobile not more than 15 minutes after the assassination, and at that time, Oswald and the person driving were the only people leaving the assassination area. Everyone else was running to the area. The driver of the station wagon, according to Craig, was a Latin who had been arrested minutes before and immediately released by a man posing as a Secret Service agent. In October 1967, when Craig was shown a picture of Edgar Eugene Bradley, he identified Bradley as the man who posed as a Secret Service agent that day. So what we have is a Dallas police officer saying he saw Oswald run down into a station wagon that looked like the one owned by Mrs. Ruth Payne, but that a Latin man was driving it, and that he happened to know that the Latin had been arrested minutes before by a man posing as a Secret Service agent, whom he later was able to identify by a photograph as Edgar Eugene Bradley. Although the entire story of what Craig witnessed was printed in the Dallas Morning News on November 23rd, 1963, the day after it was printed, the Warren Commission did not ask Craig about what he saw. The commission took a long, rambling semi-denial from Fritz as evidence that Craig was mistaken. Captain Fritz, of course. So that was used to rule out what Craig had supposedly seen. Most of us who read Craig's testimony felt that he was an honest witness, but Dallas County Sheriff Bill Decker would never allow Craig to talk to newsmen after he testified. Newsmen from all over the world tried to get statements from Craig, and this seemed to make Decker suspicious. After DA Jim Garrison started his investigation, Sheriff Decker accused Craig of talking with Garrison. When Craig denied the charge, Decker answered, "Well, someone sure as hell has been talking." Why would a sheriff make that statement? You could say just an honest sense of, hey, people are talking, but there's a particular view that's being talked about, I think, and a particular view that's trying to be shut up, and he doesn't like that it's being voiced. That's the impression I get. What do you think? Craig, now 31, was named Sheriff's Department Officer of the Year by the Dallas Traffic Commission in 1960. A celebrated officer. He received 4 promotions while he was the deputy sheriff under Bill Decker. One resulted from his capture of an international criminal named Harry Day, whom Craig had never seen. He recognized Day by recalling his picture. Decker fired Craig on July 4th, 1967. So, Roger Craig, we are being told, is a man who had enough of an honest memory and recollection of a photograph that he was able to capture a man, Harry Day, an international criminal, and received promotions for that. So he has such a good memory that his photographic recall has been proven. And we're being told he has these other memories. Seems like someone we should lean in and pay attention to. In October 1967, so this is after Decker fired him, Craig went to New Orleans to talk with Garrison. When he left the airport for Garrison's office, a, quote, tight tail was put on him. This tailing continued in New Orleans and later in Dallas until November 1st, 1967, so that's less than a month later, when an attempt was made to shoot him. As Craig walked across a parking lot at the intersection of Carroll and Columbia in Dallas, a pistol bullet moved the hair just above his left ear. Craig and Captain Will Fritz, head of homicide and robbery of the Dallas PD, left the school book depository together before the announcement of Oswald's arrest had been made. So Craig and Fritz, the two men, left the school book depository together before the announcement of Oswald's arrest had been made. When Craig heard of Oswald's arrest over the police radio, he called Fritz and told him of the man that he had seen running from the scene. After the description, Fritz said, "That sounds like the man we have in custody. Come down and see if you can identify him." So this is all back when everything is on the up and up. There is not yet a cover-up. that's at least being put to Captain Fritz, he's dealing honestly with the situation. On the day of, they left, heard the description, he hears what Craig saw and says, come on down and see if you can identify him. So he's very open at this point. Let's see if and when that changes. Fritz met Craig outside his office in the city jail building. He looked through the glass and told Fritz that was the man he had seen escape the area of the killing. So we've been given enough information about Craig to know he has a photographic memory, but not only that, he saw the man that day. So this isn't like recalling a photograph from that you saw 7 months ago. This is a man you saw that morning. Oswald is in custody, and he's saying, yeah, that's the man. The two men entered the room where Oswald was, and Fritz said, this man saw you leave. Oswald replied with agitation, I told you people I did. Fritz said, calm down, son. We are just trying to find out what happened. What about that car? Oswald answered, that station wagon belongs to Mrs. Payne. Don't try to get her involved in this. Okay, so you guys, according to Roger Craig and what he's presenting of the moment, that's how Lee Oswald got away, was in a station wagon. But we are given the picture, and I am going to Robert Groden's book, The Search for Lee Harvey Oswald, when he was in custody. Here he is. Here are some photos of him in custody in these moments. I mean, you guys, one of the wonderful things about Mr. Groden's books is they are just laden with photographic evidence. He has released 2,200 photographs to the public. But as we are looking for this situation, one of the things that we need to think about is the supposed getaway. How did he get away? We are told that he went and got on a bus. Here's that bus. The bus was kind of delayed, so then he gets off and he takes a taxi and ends up over near the rooming house here in Oak Cliff. But Roger Craig's story is telling us something different. So we should lean in and pay attention. And he is saying, actually, that Oswald himself from day one was like, I told you people I left. That station wagon belonged to Mrs. Payne. Don't try to get her involved in this. Craig distinctly remembers that Fritz said car and Oswald replied station wagon. Just about this time, Captain Fritz got a telephone call from Sheriff Decker requesting Fritz to come to talk with him. Fritz left the questioning of Oswald and retraced the 15 blocks from City Hall to Decker's office, which is less than a block from the schoolbook depository. Apparently, this was not only a personal conversation, it was something which could not be said over the telephone or police radio. So we have Sheriff Decker, he's the one who eventually fired Craig, calling Fritz right at the time that Oswald is being questioned to come to him in something that cannot be said over the phone or over the radios. The need for a personal conversation must have developed after the ride from Parkland Hospital to the schoolbook depository, as Decker caught a ride with Fritz from Parkland. So Decker had already spent time with Fritz in a car coming from Parkland to the schoolbook depository. So they had already spent time together. So this is something new that needs to be said to him. Got it? After 4.5 years, so isn't it crazy, you guys? Here we are, almost 62 years later. And Penn Jones, is feeling like it's already been 4.5 years. After 4.5 years, some of us are now speculating that knowledge of the assassination was on a need-to-know basis. When Oswald was not killed in the Texas theater and was now in the hands of Captain Will Fritz, did Fritz move into the circle of those who, quote, needed to know? To me, it is unbelievable that a captain of police would question the most important prisoner in our history for over 12 hours, yet kept no notes. Captain Fritz seemed to have considerable difficulty denying to the Warren Commission that Craig was ever in Mr. Fritz's office. We're going to get some of Fritz's testimony. Here it is, reprinted. Mr. Ball of the commission is asking, did you ever know a man named Roger Craig, a deputy sheriff? Mr. Fritz, Roger Craig. I might, if I knew which one he was. Do we have it here? He was a witness from whom you took a statement in your office, or some of your men. Some of my officers. Okay, so Fritz and Craig left the school book depository together. Craig is invited over to talk to Oswald. Here's part of the investigation. And Fritz is like, which one is that? Who's that again? Remind me. This is less than a year later, you guys, at the Warren Commission. Ball says, he was a witness from whom you took a statement in your office, or some of your men. Some of my officers. He is a deputy sheriff. One deputy sheriff who started to talk to me, but he was telling me some things that I knew wouldn't help us, and I didn't talk to him, but someone else took an affidavit from him. His story that he was telling didn't fit with what we knew to be true. Roger Craig stated that about 15 minutes after the shooting, he saw a man, a white man, leave the Texas State Book Depository building, run across a lawn, and get into a white Rambler driven by a colored man. I don't think that is true. I am stating this. You remember the witness now? Wow, that's the most urgency I've heard from a Warren Commission questioner. I remember the witness, yes, sir. Did that man ever come into your office and talk to you in the presence of Oswald? In the presence of Oswald? Yes. No, sir, I am sure he did not. I believe that man did come to my office in that little hallway, outside my office, and I believe I stepped outside the door and talked to him for a minute, and I let someone else take an affidavit from him. We should have that affidavit from him if it would help. So you can see Fritz pushing away. Which man? My men might have talked to him. Into the office? No. There's an affidavit, I'm sure, if you need any more information. He's like pushing as far as he can from himself. Ball says, now this man has stated that he came into your office and Oswald was in your office, and you asked him to look at Oswald and tell you whether or not this was the man he saw. And he says that in your presence, he identified Oswald as the man that he had seen run across this lawn and get into the white Rambler sedan. Do you remember that? I think it was taken. I think it was one of my officers. And I think if he saw him, he looked through that glass and saw him from the outside, because I am sure of one thing, that I didn't bring him in the office with Oswald. You are sure you didn't? I'm sure of that. I feel positive of that. I would remember that. I am sure. He also says that in that office, yes, sir, after he had said that is the man, that Oswald got up from his chair and slammed his hand on the table and said, now everybody will know who I am. Did that ever occur in your presence? If it did, I never saw anything like that. No, sir. There is something, we've talked about the behavior panel before. They are 4 guys who do behavior analysis, most of them from a perspective of having done military interrogations and analyzing those for data, for truth, recognizing body tells and verbal tells that we have when we are trying to hide the truth. And one of the things that we do it involuntarily, apparently, is that if somebody asks a question and we don't want to tell the truth, that apparently we lengthen our answers rather than saying, no, sir, I wasn't there. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. One sentence, very quick to the point. Instead, we say, well, it couldn't have been me because I was out at the gas station at that time. So it wasn't me. Like a long fuse delaying the telling of the lie. His answer was, if it did, I never saw anything like that. No, sir. The question was, did that ever occur in your presence? The answer would be, I don't recall, no, or yes. He says, if it did, I never saw anything like that. No, sir. It's just such a long answer, you guys. It really is suspicious to me. That didn't occur? No, sir, it didn't. That man is not telling a true story if that is what he said. Do you have any... Could I ask a question? Is it all right if I ask a question? Mr. McCloy says, all right, go ahead. Ball says, go ahead. Fritz, I was going to ask if we have any affidavits from any of our officers that would back that up. If they did, I never heard of it. Ball said, if you are here tomorrow. Fritz said, it is something I don't know anything about. If you are here tomorrow, I would like to show you the deposition of the man for you to read. Fritz said, I am sure I would know that. The only time I saw the man hit the desk was when Mr. Hosty talked to him, and he got really upset about that. So he's saying, I didn't see him hit the desk. I saw him hit the desk at this other time. Roger Craig did not testify before the Warren Commission. Of course he didn't. We get to very important witnesses all through this case, and they weren't invited to testify. His statements were taken by Commission Attorney David W. Bellin in Dallas. When Bellin started outlining just what areas of questions he intended to ask, Craig interrupted him to say, just ask me the question, counselor, and if I know the answer, I will tell you. This seemingly angered Bellin, who then spent much of his time having Craig relate just where the city police motorcycle wheels were in relation to the president's automobile. So Craig wants to answer, and Bellin takes him on a long and winding course of, could you tell me about the wheel distances? Which is not the critical information that Roger Craig has to share. This is like Lee Bowers and how the minute he gets close to talking about the flash on the grassy knoll, they swerve over to talk about a totally different thing. Even without his identification of Bradley, Craig's testimony was so devastating to the intentions of the Warren Commission that Craig's statements had to be changed. Craig has marked in my copy of Volume 6, so that would be of the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission, Craig actually took Penn Jones's copy of Volume 6, and he says he has marked 14 alterations which were made to his true testimony. The result of the changes is to make his statements more or less meaningless. He is one of the few witnesses who was not given the opportunity to have a copy of his testimony or to be allowed to read and make corrections of errors in his statements, which might have been made by the court reporter. So he's saying usually the witnesses were questioned and then given a copy of their testimony and said, please, if there are any errors or misrepresentations, let us know about those. Craig was not given that opportunity. Reprinted below is a short portion of the Craig testimony in which Craig points out 4 alterations. So we are going to read a little bit of his testimony, and then I'm going to point out to you those 4 alterations. Mr. Craig, this is his testimony that was given, or his statement that was given to Mr. Bellin. I saw a light-colored station wagon driving real slow, coming west on Elm Street from Houston. Actually, it was nearly in line with him. And the driver was leaning to his right, looking up the hill at the man running down. So leaning to his right, looking up at the man running down the hill. Mr. Bellin, Craig. And the station wagon stopped almost directly across from me. And the man continued down the hill and got in the station wagon. And I attempted to cross the street. I wanted to talk to both of them, but the traffic was so heavy, I couldn't get across the street. And they were gone before I could. Where did the station wagon head? West on Elm Street. Under the triple underpass? Yes. Could you describe the man that you saw running down toward the station wagon? Oh, he was a white male in his 20s. 5'9", 5'8", something like that. About 140 to 150. Had kind of medium brown, sandy hair. You know, it was like it had been blown. You know, he had been in the wind or something. It was all wild looking. Had on blue trousers. Bellin, what shade of blue? Dark blue, medium, or light? No, medium probably. I'd say medium. And a light tan shirt, as I remember it. Mr. Craig says his answer was light blue shirt, faded. Bellin, anything else about him? No, nothing except he looked like he was in an awful hurry. What about the man who was driving the car? Now, he struck me at first as being a colored male. He was very dark complected, had real dark short hair, and was wearing a thin, white-looking jacket. It looked like the short windbreaker type, you know, because it was real thin and had the collar that came out over the shoulder, indicating with his hands. like that, just a short jacket. Craig said he identified the jacket as tan. Bellin, you say that he first struck you that way. Do you now think that he was a Negro? Well, I didn't get a real good look at him, but my first glance at him, I was more interested in the man coming down the hill. But my first glance at him, he struck me as a Negro. Is that what your opinion is today? Well, I couldn't say because I didn't get a good enough look at him. So I want to pause right there and just say this reminds me of the same truthfulness that we saw in Lee Bowers, where he was willing to go as far as he could say, but when there was something he couldn't say, he fully owned up to that. He's not trying to make up a narrative that includes every possible detail and answers every possible question and puts him as the linchpin of the case. He's sharing the parts that he knows, and when he doesn't know, he's withholding. To me, that's a sign of truthfulness. What do you think? What kind and what color station wagon was it? It was light colored, almost, it looked white to me. Instead of white, Craig says his answer was light green. What model or make was it? I thought it was a Nash. Why would you think it was a Nash? Because it had a built-in luggage rack on the top, and at this time, this was the only type car I could fit with that type luggage rack. A Nash Rambler, is that what you're referring to? Yes, with the rack on the back portion of the car, you know. Did it have a Texas license plate or not? It had the same color. I couldn't see the name with the numbers on it. I could just barely make them out. They were at an angle where I couldn't make the numbers of the any of the writing of it, but I'm sure it was a Texas plate. Craig says he said it was not the same color as Texas plates. Bellin asked, anything else about this incident that you can recall? No, not that. All right, then what did you do? Well, then I went back up to the front of the school book depository. Rather, I went up to it and noticed that it was sealed off. There was an officer standing guard in it with a shotgun in the doorway. Several officers crowded around in front of it. Roger Craig could single-handedly defeat the entire Warren Commission report before a grand jury or a congressional investigation. We predict further attempts will be made on the life of Roger Dean Craig in his hometown of Dallas. This was written originally in 1969, reprinted in 76. This internet article that I printed out notes that additional information about Roger Craig can be found at SpartacusEducational.com. There's a dash between the words Spartacus and educational. So if you want to look up more information about Roger Craig, you can do so there. And also that Baylor.com, there's an article about Roger Craig that includes a portion of his writings. So there is some places where you can find more information, but I am interested in hearing from all of you. What do you make of Roger Craig? What do you think about the idea that the Warren Commission printed a false testimony from him? Do you believe that? What do you make of the fact that he says he talked to Lee Oswald? What do you make of Sheriff Decker firing him and Fritz giving testimony that he just wasn't credible? I don't think he was in the room. He stayed out in the hallway, etc., pretending not to even be able to remember which one he was. Does that ring true to you? I don't know. I know there was a lot of police activity that day and sheriff activity. I don't want to be harsh on a policeman who was just trying to do his job and perhaps didn't know Craig very well, but Craig had been distinguished as a sheriff 3 years prior to the assassination. And he walked out of the building with Fritz. He went in and talked with Fritz, at least according to Fritz's testimony, while he was talking with Lee Oswald. So you'd think you would remember that person. I think you would. Let me know in the comments what you think. Can't wait to hear from you. Hope you enjoyed this article about Roger Craig. Come back next time for more. We'll see you soon.